What's up, and welcome to The Greatest Teacher of All Time, where I, Quincy Dawson, interview teachers of color to highlight their philosophies, strategies, and personalities. Today, I've got David McDonald here. What's up, David?
What's good, everybody?
Yeah, so David, you are the CEO, founder of Education Powered, where culture meets education. Yeah.
Yes, that's correct.
All right, all right. And yeah, thank you for being here. I know being a CEO, founder, you're busy, but thank you. I really appreciate this.
Of course, this is a pleasure to be here and I'll be able to talk about education. I do this all the time. So anytime I can speak about Black education and how our students and teachers are doing is always a pleasure for me.
All right, perfect. Let's get right into it. So again, this show is The Greatest Teacher of All Time. David, are you a teacher?
So I'm actually not in the classroom anymore. I am a former teacher, former educator. I always keep that hat with me. So I used to teach eighth grade English language arts here in Dallas. And I also taught sixth grade English language arts as well in DeSoto, Texas, which is a little bit south of Dallas as well. So former teacher, not currently in the classroom, but I support educators in different areas.
There it is. That's where it's at. Okay, yeah, I don't think I realized you were an English person. That's cool. That's cool.
Yeah. And there's not a lot of Black men who are in teaching period. 2% of educators are Black men, but there's definitely, I don't know the percentage, but a smaller percentage of Black men who were teaching English language arts. Throughout all my classroom experiences, I was the only Black male in my department in every year that I was teaching. So.
Wow. And you said in Texas, yeah?
In Texas, Dallas.
Okay, yeah. We'll get into what Texas is doing in education in a second. But yeah, so you used to teach the middle or elementary school English, but now you started a company. How did you get into that? And what is your company?
So with Education Powered, it really started from my experience as a classroom teacher. So, I'm sure from your experience, you know as well how hard that first year in the classroom is. Like, we come into the profession thinking that, okay, I've been a student before. I've been in the classroom as a student, so it shouldn't be that hard. On the other side, being a teacher, right? It's going to be simple and easy, but it's not the case. You get into it and realize that this is one of the hardest professions to work in because it requires such a deep understanding of like the content you're teaching, how to like deliver instruction to students. So it's a lot that comes into it. And one of the things during my first years in the classroom, I taught students who looked just like me, with a staff that was predominantly Black as well, but it was very difficult to find like, one, how do you actually teach and create a classroom that's actually like culturally responsive, that's exciting and fun and engaging. I got trainings on everything else but that, right? How to do discipline, how to grade papers, right? How to deliver a test. And other things that are important as well. Not to say that everything that we got, instructed on was useless, but the one thing that I was looking for was how do you actually create a classroom experience that students want to be in, and actually like is effective in giving them what they need, not only just academically, but also as a person. And I couldn't find that. It was very difficult to get resources online, lesson plans that reflected my students. So I struggled with that my entire first year. And so after that, long story short, I just kind of been like, well, if I can't find it, then that must mean that I need to create it. It needs to be created. And so Education Power was kind of birthed from that idea of like, how do we create more resources and materials for teachers to use that are actually going to support creating classrooms that are exciting, energizing, but also will help students get a deeper understanding of their identity while they're in the classroom and in pursuit of their academic goals. So
interesting.
Go on and on, but that's the short version.
Yeah. So it sounds like part of that, again, making these classes that students want to be in, a lot of that is like the teacher's personality, being personable, but also like these other skills you're giving, right? Can all of that be taught? Like
to the teacher?
Yeah.
That is a good question. That's a great question. I think there are some things that actually cannot be taught. I think that it comes through experience. And I think that's the importance around like me as an educator. I didn't, there's I had a lot of experience with youth before becoming a teacher, which set me up to be better prepared to serve in the classroom. Like I worked in after school programs since I was in high school, right? I was a mentor after school, working with middle school and elementary school students after school. Even in college, I used to, do mentoring programs, and I would work with the Boys and Girls Club and work with our Austin, Parks and Recreation Center. So I had a lot of experience working with students. So the only thing I had to kind of learn was how do you now layer on this level of like instruction in the classroom?
Hmm.
Whereas other people were coming in not having any experience with kids or students,
Okay.
not having any, experience with creating learning environments for people that are fun and engaging. And you put them in the classroom with students, and it's like you're learning on the job. So I think that some things cannot be taught; they have to be experienced. So that's the importance behind like I think teachers need to, yeah, they need to come in with some experience working with kids and not just day one being put in front of the classroom with no type of that background.
Yeah, and it's cool, like being in the field. Like, how long were you teaching for?
So I taught for 3 years formally, and then I've been supporting educators for the past 4 or 5 years.
Okay, okay. So yeah, with my years in education, you've probably seen teachers who like you see like, oh, you have it, like you got it, right?
Yeah, you can tell off the bat too. Like walking in, like this person is gonna do. Like they may be, have some things to fine tune, but they're gonna be like a phenomenal teacher. Just by their presence and their aura and how they approach the classroom.
Right, right. But
Yeah.
like what you said, that's only half it, right? So can you tell me about how your company actually helps teachers get that other half? Like what type of support do you guys give teachers through the company?
Yeah, so mainly our business focuses on culturally responsive teaching, and so what that includes is a lot of different things. So it's a complete different approach to like changing how we think about education, and I think what we provide is really helping teachers think about their classroom differently. Like it's not just a place where you are teaching kids math
Hmm.
or English or science. It's not that. Like that. That's a part of it. Yes, they're going to learn the information. They're going to be able to gain those skills, but more so, your classroom is a place for students to really develop themselves holistically. So not only just academically, but also, like I said, in their identity. Like who I am as a person is important to me, and the school is the place where that type of learning should happen. It's not just about tests and you know, assignments and activities, but it's also a place for me to come in, figure out like one, who am I? What's my, but how do I want to impact this world and my community? And how do I make sense of the things that are happening? Like right now, we're going through a lot as a country. And so where are kids and students processing that? That has to happen at the school, right? When things
Mhm.
are happening in our communities, where are the places where people are being able to strategize and organize and plan things to move the communities forward? It has to be the school. I think we're kind of shifting and changing. We're hoping to be a part of the movement of changing what our schools could be and look like, and really changing them to be places of like, this is where community change happens. So yeah, it's kind of like pushing the thought around like how I structure my classroom in terms of the engagement, in terms of what we talk about and how we deliver instruction, but also how kids interact. What role does the community have in the school? There's so much that goes into it, but I think the simple through line is like, let's shift the way that we're thinking about a classroom of being just a place for instruction and more so a place for community change.
Yeah, and I think it's that part that's getting to me. It's like when you go for an interview with like a principal, right? You want to make sure you hit all these buzzwords like, yeah, differentiation, yeah, scaffolding.
Yeah.
Those are like those buzzwords that you hear that have like a concrete example that you can show, right? I feel like culturally responsive teaching is another buzzword that doesn't have a concrete example. You know what I mean? Am I right in that?
Yeah, it's very true. Like there's different. So when it comes to CRT, there is no method, or there is like not
Yeah,
a
yeah.
formula you can apply to say, okay, now I'm being culture responsive to my students, or like it's not. There are different rubrics or things that you can use to help like kind of get a sense of how responsive you're being. But there's no perfect way like to say, okay, yeah, these are the things you have to do to be a culture responsive teacher in your classroom. It really is based on the students who sit in front of you. It's based on the environment that the school is situated in. It's based on you as a teacher, like how you show up in the classroom, what's authentic to you. And so there's so many different measures that are taken into place. That makes it kind of difficult to say, okay, this is what CRT is, or you're being culture responsive versus you're not.
Yeah, and I think, yeah, that's really interesting to me too, because it's in the word, right? Culturally responsive, responsive to your culture in front of you, which is different for everyone, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So now I want to get onto some more fancy words in education, right? Critical race theory,
The
right?
buzzwords.
So again, super, super abstract, but like, what does that mean to you in terms of education powered in being culturally responsive?
Yeah, so I think that there's definitely a lot beyond the word CRT being the same in culture responsive teaching and critical race theory, and like those outside of that, there really two different areas. So a
Yeah.
lot of people are confusing culture responsive teaching with critical race theory, and it's not the same. They do have a lot of areas where it overlaps, right? Just in terms of the content, but critical race theory is more so around, you know, how we are trying to bring race into the conversation for us to push the really not just America, but push our collective, the way we're talking about systemic racism and change forward. So critical race theory is talking around systems of oppression, how, it's really embedded in everything, where cultural teaching is not necessarily tied to just race. So culture is where you live, it's who you are, it's your gender identity, it's your sexual orientation as a part of your culture, your geographic location, right? If I'm in the center, if I live in metropolitan Dallas, my experience is different than if I live in rural Dallas, right? Or on the outskirts of Dallas. So all of that is a part of my culture, and that impacts how I learn and how I, navigate the world. Where critical race theory is literally what it is a theory that is being discussed about how do we move our collective forward to be better, not to be less racist. That's what it is. How can we figure out how to remove racism? Let's look to critical race theory. Cultural teaching is about how do we better serve our students in the classroom, right? Who are
Mm,
Black, who are students of color. Yeah,
yeah.
that's my understanding of it. It's not the perfect. I haven't been, in the classroom in a minute. In terms of like, my education being like in a, what am I trying to say? I haven't been in a college campus to discuss critical race theory in a minute, but I think that that's kind of where I would explain it if I was in a professor at a class.
Yeah, I get it too. I get it too. But yeah, I think you're talking about the differences between the two, like, I guess, schools, right? Schools of thought. But
Exactly.
I don't know. I guess I'm thinking of it in terms of being culturally responsive, as what you were saying is being responsive to who is in front of you, right? It seems like all like the push for and against critical race theory, right? Talking about how to be better, right? In terms of racist oppressions and just be aware of it, right? It seems like in some cases you would not want to talk about that depending on the culture in front of you, right? Is that, do you get what I'm trying to say?
Maybe not. Maybe I'm. So maybe give me some more background on what you mean.
Yeah, I mean, if we're just going to say, it seems like the people who don't want to hear about the racist history of the country, right, don't want to hear about it, right? And it's, man, how can I be what's the word, culturally responsible when saying this, right?
Yeah.
It's like white people who may not want to fully accept, right, that the country's history of being racist, they don't want to hear about it in schools, right? So is it culturally responsible to not mention it to them?
No. I
No.
would say
Okay.
no, just
Help me out.
because
Help me
like
out.
that was still being like so. In that scenario, if we know that when it comes to being responsive to our students, right? I'm going to cater my curriculum or my instruction to every single student in my classroom. I'm taking into account all of my students, right? Who are they? What do they need? And how can I adapt my instruction to match their needs, but also to be able to push them forward academically and personally, right?
I think, yeah,
If
keep going, keep
I
going.
if I look at if I intentionally take away some of those strategies and tactics because there's white students in the classroom and they don't want to hear that, then I am literally like not being responsive to all the students in my classroom, right?
Got you.
Being culture responsive includes white students too, right? So if there are white students in my classroom, I also need to understand who are they, where they come from, what is their what are their needs and what are their understandings, that I can be able to provide them a experience that's going to push them forward academically. So it doesn't take, even if I had a class of all white students, I still do culture responsive. If I have a set of white students who are from Houston, right, versus white students who live in Nebraska, I don't know, right? Those group students are going to need different sets of a different experience, right? They have different ways of living. They have different things that they have already been exposed to previously that I can use in my instruction, right? That they know, like things that happen in Houston are not the same things that are happening in Nebraska, right? So I hope that's kind of answering your question of like, yeah, being culture responsive is not just about people of color, even though we know that students of color are the most marginalized, specifically in America. And you go to different countries, it may be different, right? But being culture responsive here, our students of color are definitely the ones who are, the education system is not meeting their needs. And so being more responsive when we're talking about the conversation, it is centered around students of color, but being responsive doesn't necessarily it applies to everybody and all students. So white students will benefit from that too. White teachers and white communities will also benefit from being more responsive.
Yeah, thank you for that, Derek. I appreciate that. You really enlightened me to that because I think the main or one of the big parts that hit me was that you're trying to move them forward, right? And yeah, I do think by opening up those conversations does help move them forward.
Yeah.
So nice. Getting back into more about your company, right, and what you guys are doing. So it's no secret, a lot of teachers are leaving the classroom, right? And this is happening for a lot of different reasons. Some from like admins, some teachers personally, some what's going on with the pandemic. How do you think Education Powered fits into that equation? Like, are you guys trying to get teachers more? Are you trying to get admin more? Are you trying to, what's your approach on that?
Yeah, I think it's kind of all inclusive. Like, so I think one of our programs that we are really proud of is our Young Black Educators. And so we are, it's an initiative to allow to like highlight the contributions and the successes and impacts of young Black educators who are in classrooms working with students, or who are serving as assistant principals or principals, and education as a whole, counselors, the whole bucket. If you work in education, you are a young Black educator in some form. And I think that that's kind of just highlighting the need that we need more. Not to just be, we know that there's definitely a lot of reports that have been shared, specifically in like the most recent years, around the impact of Black educators on students' likelihood to go to college or likelihood of just to persist through school, and knowing that we need more representation. And so our goal is to like, one, be able to highlight what Black educators are doing in the classroom, and also to encourage other folks to see this as something that they could be doing too. Because, when we're in college, I don't know about you, but for me, I was always pushed to like, the big professions are being an attorney, a doctor, a lawyer, right? Those are the glamorous professions that come with all of the hype around it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Being a teacher always seems like the fallback plan. It's like, if you can't do it, then you teach it. Or if that's some of the, I've heard that before, or like, oh, like all you're gonna do is gonna be a teacher. So I think kind of shifting the narrative around like, that is actually a profession that is, one, needed, and two, your impact can be seen in that too. But also three, like, it provides you with a lot of different skills and experiences that are valuable and that are needed, that are just as glamorous as other professions. So I think that we're trying to be on the just in the community with helping change that narrative. Like, we need more people to join education, and that it is a sexy profession to do,
Okay. So I guess that's more of at the school level, right? So you guys partner with schools and then meet with teachers, or how does that go?
So with our clients that we work with, we partner with schools to deliver professional development to their campuses around culture responsive teaching. But just socially, in our community, we're always working with Black educators to host different events. It was before COVID started, we used to have a couple of events. So we had a Black educators brunch, just to get Black educators together and build community and network that way. And just also used to have events in person where we just talk around, we'll bring Black educators together to have conversations around, what is it that we need? What is it that we're necessarily struggling with? How does it feel being a Black educator, and then help build those communities, because we need that. So if there's not many of us in the work, it's good to be able to get in spaces where you see each other, be able to know that we're having not the same experience, but I can have a shared experience with certain people who are have a similar background or identity with myself.
Yeah, and also just getting those ideas out so that more people are able to receive it, right?
Absolutely. And like you can actually, what you can't be what you cannot see is something that that I've heard before. And so being able to have people see like, yes, there are Black people who are teaching and are doing amazing things, and you could do this too. You had the skill set, and this is a profession you should consider. As in addition to you thinking about being a lawyer, doctor, whatever, go to your calling, but teaching could be your calling too. So don't run from it.
Yeah, man. This is great to hear, Dave. I really appreciate it. This is great. So yeah, with everything you're doing education, what you've done teaching in the past, what you're doing for Education Powered right now, what's next for maybe the company, for you? Any?
Oh, there's a lot. There's a lot. So I can start with the company first. So this summer, we'll actually be releasing our first book that'll be available on Amazon, and also it'll be available in Barnes and Noble as well. And so we'll be, if people who are interested in learning more about culturally responsive teaching, we'll be sharing more about just our experiences in the classroom through this book, and also releasing a set of standards around culturally responsive teaching that teachers can use as a way to kind of gauge their instruction and get different ideas about how to be more culturally responsive in the classroom. That's something that's big that's happening for us this summer. We're going to be continuing to do professional development, of course, this year with different schools and campuses. And so we'll be doing that both virtually and in person, just depending on how COVID continues to hopefully decrease throughout this next year. And in person, I think that we're all just continuing to grow in our profession. And so working on different projects to help bring, specifically in Black communities, more resources and more support, even outside of education, to the classroom. So developing some specific partnerships with organizations and also just people to help bring more resources to the work that we're all kind of doing together. So,
oh, okay.
That's the short version.
Yeah, short version, but I could tell it's about to be big. It's about to be big.
Yeah, I'm excited. It's going to be a good year for education. I think there's a lot of investment coming toward just recruiting Black educators, and also just investing in schools who are in need. So,
okay. Again, David, this has been great. Thank you so much for sharing your insight on education, what you're doing with the company. It's all just part of the reasons why I think you're one of the greatest teachers of all time, or educators in this case.
Thank you. And I definitely want to give credit to educators who came before me too, like knowing that while I know I'm not the perfect teacher, I definitely have been able to, I think, have some really phenomenal experiences with my students. And that's all credit to some of the educators who I have been able to sit in their classrooms with, right? So in college, I've had one of my phenomenal professors was Dr. Moore, was in a class of, our first class was called Race and the Age of Obama. And it really like changed my entire perspective on what education could look like, right? Because my K-12 experience was just, I have some great teachers, but most of my experience was just like traditional school.
Yeah.
When I got to college, that class showed me like, oh, you can talk about race and identity and be in like my own personal experience in the same time as learning about literature and learning about other students' experiences and how that blends to create a really phenomenal experience. And so, yeah, that's one example. There's plenty more examples I could go into, but just want to also give credit to I'm a phenomenal teacher because there's teachers who I've been experienced who were phenomenal before me.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. And curious, was your undergrad in English or literature, or is?
Oh, it wasn't. No. So my undergrad degree was actually in education, and also, technically my second degree is in Black studies. And so that is a very literature based. It is liberal arts. But yeah, my second degree was in African and African diaspora studies. So.
Okay. Yeah. Again, all great to hear. I love it. I love it. All right. Thank you to everyone else for listening to The Greatest Teacher of All Time, where I, Quincy Dawson, interview teachers of color to highlight their philosophies, strategies, and personalities.